Hey guys, it's Morgan, and I'm with my brother Andrew, and today we're going to be discussing the topic of whether or not being trans is a choice.
Hi guys, my name is Andrew Laura. My pronouns are he, him, his. I go to Drew University and my major is media and communications. And a fun fact about me is that I love nature and I love writing poetry.
Hey guys, I'm back. I'm just going to give a little introduction about myself. Obviously, I go to Montclair State University. I'm majoring in psychology and minoring in public and professional writing. I'm currently a junior, and fun fact about me is I like riding bikes in the nature. Okay, so the first question that we have for today is, has being black affected or shaped your experience as a trans man? I feel like being black has definitely affected my experience as a trans man. Just coming from like a different background, where being trans is not quote unquote the norm, it was hard trying to like figure out who I was, especially like coming from a religious background. It was hard because I was told one thing. Like, yeah, we're like religious, we only follow this kind of way, only heterosexual cisgender lifestyle. But then as I started to like grow up and discover myself, it like everything changed. And also like being a part of the LGBTQ community and being black, it's also hard because of the connotation, like being black is like a whole thing in itself. And then when you're LGBTQ, it's like you're like a double minority because black people in the community will like treat you as less than, especially if you're queer. And it's just this whole argument base that comes up, and it's like difficult to be a trans man and like have so many identities within that community.
Being black has affected my experience as a trans man. Because when I was in the transition of trying to figure out who I was and what this lifestyle consisted of, mental health was a big thing as well because I didn't know how to verbally express it to my parents and my family. And I feel like coming from a African American background, they don't really take mental health seriously in a sense. It is just something that's not regular to them. So I didn't know how to verbally express that I was trans or verbally express the things that I was going through. So it just made it hard to like come out or to talk to my parents about it because I thought that, if I did come out to them or if I did tell them like, yeah, I'm trans, that they would be like disappointed in me and that it would just alter my life in ways that were unexplainable.
Okay, now we're moving on to our next question, which is, do you think society's perception of you changed since transitioning?
So, my answer to this question is yes and no. Yes, in a sense of like, some people are confused. Some people don't understand what it means to be trans or what it means to transition and completely change like your gender identity. And some people are just completely against it. Some people are like, that's wrong and that's the end of the conversation, while others are trying to adjust. Others are trying to like really understand what we go through and understand the type of people we are, as like my parents and my family are as well. But no, in a sense of like, I identify as obviously a trans man and I try to present myself in a very masculine manner, but sometimes it is just not successful in that sense. So, I go day by day sometimes like getting misgendered, or people just don't think I'm presenting masculine enough, so people don't understand the fact that I am transgender. And a lot of people in society just don't have the guts to just ask, which I feel like, is not necessarily a disrespectful thing. If you ask, I'd rather you just ask me than like assume that I am one way or I am another way. So my answer to the question then goes again as yes and no, because in some ways society's perception is changing, but in some ways people are clouded, like their judgment are clouded, so they don't want to change their thoughts and their ways.
Yeah, like I hate when, just to like comment on one of the things that you said, like I hate when like people assume. I rather people just like ask, because people will come up to me and like they don't know at first, and I'm like, sometimes they won't know at first, and I'm like, well, it's okay to ask. It's easy to educate yourself on like these kind of things. I feel like society's view of me has changed since socially transitioning, due to the sense like family wise. My mom, she kind of tries to understand the whole experience of being trans, but she confuses it with sexual orientation. And I try to educate her, but she still doesn't really understand. It's just the fact of trying to educate a person so they can like understand your experience is kind of hard when like they come from a kind of background where that wasn't really out and about. So for my family, they're trying to understand the concept of me being a man, but like I said, it's kind of hard. And when I go out into the open world, and I'm viewed as a man most of the time because I physically pass. And if you don't know the term passing, it means like, you know, presenting or appearing as cisgender. Until I speak to people and then they're like, oh, I'm sorry about that. Or, you know, they happen to just like, you know, might happen to like see my chest and whatnot, and they'll just then go off and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, like, you know. But it's like, you were right the first time. So it's hard in this society now being trans because of people's different views of what it means to be trans and how they see trans people and whatnot.
And similar to what he said, it's kind of like a sense of trying to dictate whether or not people are just being mean people, or if what they're saying is coming off as harmless. Because I've had to really understand that, like, some people genuinely don't know, and they genuinely want to be nice, and they want to, like, you know, call you as such. They want to identify you in the way that you identify, but it's just like hard, especially with societal like rules or gender rules or whatever the case may be. They just don't know, and it's like a thing about, which we'll touch on later, is just having to educate them and getting them to understand in the best way possible.
Our third question that we have is, what was the experience of attending an all-girls institution as a trans man? So both me and Andrew attended school in Newark, and we both went to the same school. He's just a year below me. So our experience was actually kind of crazy. Our experience was similar in a sense because you know, we both basically came out in school. I believe that he came out a little bit before me, and then like after that I came out probably like a couple of months after. And the crazy thing is that like we knew each other in high school, but like we didn't really talk at first. So the fact that like we socially transitioned at the same time, we were just basically in sync.
Yeah.
We were basically in sync.
Like the same person.
Yeah, like the same person. And like our experiences are like kind of similar. It's just that like when he came out, like go ahead, tell them like.
So when I came out, I tried to socially transition as much as possible. It was really hard. I started off, I was in a relationship at the time, and I was just, the only person I had really talked to was that person about everything that I was going through, everything that I was feeling, and that person helped me to understand like my identity and how I was going to come out to people and let people know about this. So I started by socially coming out. I started telling like my friends in little like friend groups, like, hey guys, you know, like a whisper, like, hey guys, I'm trans, you know what I mean? And I was kind of just like trying to gateway and like see what people's reactions were, to see like where it would go, like when I came and I told my parents, or when I told like teachers and whatever the case may be. And so after I started telling my friends, there was a few teachers at the school that were like pretty cool people, and pretty like chill people compared to like everybody else. So I started, like, I told them and I let them know, and I was like, you know, if you could identify me with he him pronouns, and call me Andrew, because this is a name that I prefer to go by and that I want to go by, that would be amazing. And they were actually really understanding and really like helpful with it. But it was, I think the hardest part about the transition, in terms of socially transitioning, was telling my parents. It took like a year, maybe a year and a half after, to actually tell my parents. My experience of attending the school, it was hard, honestly, because I had to go day by day getting misgendered, and just getting, like, they were saying just my dead name. They were saying, like, using she, her pronouns and stuff. And it was like, I was also trying to understand that they didn't actually know because I didn't tell them, but it was because I was so uncomfortable with telling them. The school we attended was a private Catholic school, so everything was about, like Morgan talked about earlier in one of his questions, in one of his answers, they were heavily religious, so everything they basically were like teaching us in religion classes, like, this is how everything should be, this is how, this is what it says in the Bible, this is what it says here. And so, I had this perception in my head of like, all right, I can't be trans and I can't be open here, because it's just not okay. And it was hard because it's like, I go to an all-girls school. I attend an all-girls school, and now I'm telling people that I'm not a girl, and now I'm telling people that I'm a guy. And so it's like, it was also things in the back of my head of like, I didn't want to get kicked out of the school. I didn't want them to be like, oh, you're a boy, so you can't go here anymore. Now I don't have a high school and stuff like that. Like, It was a lot. I think it was really hard for me. I was going through a lot, like, mentally and emotionally, but also like trying to, while understanding myself, like trying to get other people to understand me. And it was hard because it's like, if I can't understand myself, how am I supposed to get somebody else to understand me?
Yeah, like my experience was I kind of came out like junior year of high school, but instead of like right away saying I was trans, I identified as gender fluid just because my education on the trans community wasn't that fluent, because I was just trying to like understand and the concepts of everything. So my girlfriend now, my current girlfriend, she was trying to help me understand like what identity I might like have. So, she was like, try using like he, him pronouns. I was like, okay, like I like that, you can start using that for me. But I was still identifying as gender fluid because like I said, I didn't really understand the whole concept of everything. So I started off with like how Andrew said, small friend groups saying like, hey guys, like, can you use like he, him pronouns for me? And, people were like, yeah, we could try, like, because they were also trying to understand as well. So they were like trying to use he, him pronouns and like trying to validate my whole experience. And like from there, as I continued to grow and entered like my freshman year of college, that's when I finally like came out as trans. Like I said it myself, it came out of my mouth. And I started telling everybody like, yeah, I'm trans, and I started like coming out on the internet and like just in a sense like fully socially transitioning so everybody could know my experience. But being at the institution that we went to, my experience was difficult because I never like fully connected with the girls that were there. Like I know that I've always felt different. Like I've always was masculine presenting when attending that school. I've always just felt, out of place. And that's how I kind of knew that, it was like I was different than everybody else. And just being in that environment, being around a whole bunch of like, girly girls and stuff like that, it didn't really help the fact that, that I'm trans and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, well, I don't really know what I am, but I just know that I'm not this. So like, what's going on? And like in order for it to finally click in my head, I just had to have more mental growth in order to reach that level that I'm at now.
And then building off of what Morgan said, I feel like it was already hard enough because before coming out as trans, I identified as a lesbian female, as Morgan did as well.
Disclaimer, we hate that word.
Okay. So being a lesbian female before coming out as trans, we were already not accepted as much at the high school. And so I would get in situations I would get in situations where like the teachers at the school were like really had their eye on me and would look at me a little differently because I hated like that. Yeah, it was annoying. It was like I already liked females, so they were like, they didn't like it there already. They didn't like the fact that I liked females. They were always down my back. They would be watching every interaction that I had with women at that school. And so
always
it was just,
back.
Yeah, it was just really uncomfortable to be there. And it was really hard to just like transition from, okay, I identify as a female, and now I don't.
Also, going off of the video, The Science of Being Transgender by ASAP Science, me and Andrew definitely connect with the part in the video where they talk about the gendered brains and how if you are biologically born female and then you transition to male, your brain is going to be closer to a biological male. And I feel like we identify with that because as we were attending the school, we had a different experience than all those girls. Our brains were more on of a guy level. We thought like guys and we acted like guys, and that's how we still act today. Like we definitely, if we were to look at our brains now, I'm pretty sure people like doctors would be able to find that, the gendered brain, the gender brain thing, and like how we the reason why we act masculine, the reason why we act like this and think like this is because we are men at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like as we were just trying to, get through being at an all-girls school, our brains were developing in different ways, like Morgan said, developing in different ways from all of them. So as, the school was trying to teach us about being women and femininity and all of that stuff, we were kind of gearing in different ways and trying to focus more on our masculinity and about presenting as a male and about doing things that cisgender males would do to make us fit in more with guys.
Our next question is, what resources do you believe transgender children need access to while growing up in schools or neighborhoods?
I believe that children need access to the LGBTQ community as a whole. And in that, I feel like it should be taught in schools and incorporated into students' education. Because in today's society, a lot of parents and a lot of just people in general try to shelter children from knowing and learning about the LGBTQ community. And in the future, if it is taught in schools, in the future, people won't have to, or children specifically, won't have to be introduced to it in weird ways or in ways in which they are not supposed to, or are out of norm. They could just be introduced to it in schools and learn about it so they not only understand themselves, if that applies to them, but understands other people as well.
Yeah, I just want to say that representation definitely matters. Trans kids don't have a lot of representation. They need that when they're growing up so they can know that they're not alone. So when you do incorporate it in the school systems, they know that there's not only one way of life. Like, it's not only heterosexuality and cisgender people in the world. There's people like them too. So not only can it be taught through sex education, but it can be just implemented in their curriculum, so they know what it's like, what it means to be lesbian, what it means to be gay, what it means to be bisexual, what it means to be transgender, what it means to be asexual, what it means to be queer, all that, so they can know that that they have people like that in their corner. And also, like, in neighborhoods, like in neighborhoods, things can programs can be set up for them so they can have like safe spaces where they can go and they can talk to adults or like other kids that are like them, so they can know like they're not alone.
And an example of that is like Morgan and I get a lot of questions about being trans and about being a part of the LGBTQ community. But personally, like, and I think I can speak for the both of us when I say this, we don't know everything either. Like, we're not completely educated on everything, and we try to learn as much as possible day by day. And so it shouldn't just be up to those a part of the LGBTQ community to educate everyone. It shouldn't be our job to educate everyone. There should be a process in which people are educated as they grow up and as they, just become, individuals.
So our fifth question, which is the main topic of discussion, is being trans a choice? We're both gonna say no.
Yeah, that's the answer. Being trans is not a choice. I think it's just about figuring out if that is you. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's just like you need to figure out who you are. And I feel like since growing up, especially because like Morgan said, for example, he said he was never like super feminine. He was always masculine, and he was always like, that was always him as a kid. For me, I feel like personally I was pretty feminine, but only because I feel like it was projected onto me to be feminine, because I had so many women around me, so it was kind of projected onto me to be feminine. And so I grew up like, wearing skirts and doing this and doing that because I had to. I didn't really have much of a choice. And as I got older, especially when I got to middle school, for example, I started dressing a little differently. I started presenting as I could, because I was growing up and becoming my own person. But I feel like I was always trans. I just needed to figure out that I was trans. I needed to figure out what that consisted of and what that meant for me. So like when I was in middle school, I had a conversation with one person in the entire world. It was my aunt. I had a conversation with her. I was 12, and I mentioned her, like, I think I want to be a boy. I think I am a boy. And she was like, what do you mean by that? And I didn't know how to explain it, so I shut that idea down, and I shut it down for a really long time. And I didn't come out as trans until I was like 16, 17. And it's because going back to the last question, I wasn't educated. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that consists of. So like we said, being trans is not a choice at all. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah, like being trans is definitely like a feeling that you feel deep within your soul. Like as I was little and I was growing up, I look back on my experiences in life, and there's like certain moments in my life where I was like, yeah, I should have known back then, but because I didn't know the terms, I didn't know the terminology, I was just like a confused person, like I just didn't know what being trans was. But there's like this distinct memory that I have when I was at like one of my guy's friend's birthday party, and I was surrounded by a whole bunch of dudes, and like I just felt so out of place because I didn't feel like I was like fitting in with the girls. But like I feel like I definitely was like fitting in with the guys because I would always play and hang around them. So like I was just like I'm one of you, like I'm one of the guys, and I'm a boy, so can you guys like please treat me as such? And they were just confused because like we're all just little kids, but like from knowing that at a young age, you just know. And when you grow up, you just start figuring out more and more about yourself. And because of like you experience like that, it is because like the lack of representation, not having as a trans kid growing up. Like growing up, I didn't have anybody around me who was trans or who was queer, who was a part of the LGBTQ community. I didn't have that growing up, but look at me now. I'm a trans man, and when people say that, oh, you're choosing to be trans, you're choosing to be queer, we're not, because this is just how we naturally feel. It's not something that you choose. We don't choose to have gender dysphoria. We don't choose to have these mental issues with us that we have to deal with on a daily. What we are choosing is to act on medically transitioning. You don't choose to socially transit. You do choose to socially transition, but you don't choose to be trans. You choose to medically transition, taking hormones, getting surgeries. That's what you act upon. But having dysphoria and dealing with the fact that we always don't feel like we're enough is something that we have to deal with like every single day. Our final question that we have is, what can people do to be effective allies for the transgender community? Definitely what people can do to be better allies is just educate yourselves. Education is always the key. It's always the key to everything. So when you educate yourself about the transgender community and you spread that education and awareness and positivity, other people are now educated and they won't go and just speak nonsense into the world. That is one way to definitely be an effective ally. And also like share or donate to like nonprofit organizations that help out LGBTQ youth or just people in general. And also if people have like GoFundmes for like their surgeries or just to like start hormones in general, like definitely like share, or if you can donate. But like I said, education is always going to be like number one.
Yeah, I feel like another thing is people just need to not be afraid of differences. I feel like too many people in the society are afraid of like change and are afraid of things out of the norm. And it's like it makes life harder for those that are identifying with that, or like, you know, for example, like transgender people, not just me and Morgan, but you know, if you're acting different towards trans folks, and you're like basically making them feel uncomfortable, it'll be an uncomfortable space for everyone. So it's like not being afraid of the norms, like, and just being accepting or trying to understand so that you can be accepting of these people, and of their lifestyle. And like Morgan said, like just educating yourself, just like keeping up with like everything that you possibly can. If you don't know an answer to a question, ask someone that may know the answer to the question, or look it up on the internet, or like, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do to keep yourself educated so that this could be a safe space and a safe community for everyone.
And to end off the podcast, we have a quote from an article in the New York Times called "The Quest for Transgender Equality."
The quote reads, "Coming out meant going through life as a pariah. Being transgender today remains unreasonably and unnecessarily hard, but it is far from hopeless."
So basically what this quote is saying, like, coming out back then was extremely hard because transgender people were seen as social deviants, going against the norm. But today in our society, it's actually easier, because our generation is making it a must for everyone to be accepted. Even though it is difficult at sometimes, we're doing extremely great from what it was back then.
Yeah, and like, you know, while today it is still hard, it is still a process, and we have farther to go with this transition of like this societal transition. It's not impossible. The quote is saying that it's not impossible. And extending off of that, if we just continue to educate people, we continue to make people understand, help people understand what this means and how to advocate for it, that it'll eventually get better.
This has been Morgan and Andrew discussing the trans experience. See you later.
Bye.